What happens when water is exposed to EMF, or wireless radiation? Here's something you may not know. Water is conscious, and it responds vibrationally to whatever it is exposed to. At Omnia, we've done an experiment where we froze and photographed 3 samples of water. Water which was not exposed to EMF radiation, the baseline, looked like this. Water which was exposed to an EMF field, a 5G radiation field in fact, looked like this. And water which was exposed to EMF that is balanced by the Omnia radiation balancer looked like this. See the difference? Remember, your body is 70% water. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
You guys ready?
Yep.
Yep. Say it again, Mason.
Yep. Can you hear me? Is volume good?
Yeah, no, I should say that's how we should start the episode. Yep. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Our first official episode post-conference. We did the little after party, but this is our first official episode back. And joining us tonight is Mason Feary, who spoke at our conference, and we'll get into what we're going to cover today in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to remind people that one of our affiliates is the Omnia Radiation Balancer, which I have on my phone right now. And if anybody's looking for a way to protect themselves from harmful EMFs that are bombarding us every day, this is a perfect way to do it. It actually doesn't block the radiation. What it does is harmonizes the frequency and actually turns it into something beneficial for your body and for your home. I have it on my Wi-Fi router, my computer, my phone, my iPad, all my devices, and it definitely makes a difference. It actually eliminated my migraine headaches when I first got it, and you can save 10% off of all the Omnia radiation products, including they have pendants you can wear around your neck, so it actually creates a field around your body, not just your audio devices. So you can save 10% on all their products with promo code TRUTH, all caps in that description, or that link is below in the description. But as I mentioned today, we are joined by Mason Feary. His presentation was awesome at the conference, and he talked about sound being related to light and color. And it was just this next level mind-blowing presentation that I'm not doing much justice here talking about it now, but Mason will fill us in on what that was. But the reason we're here today is because of the Terrance Howard episode that just aired on Joe Rogan. And Mason, you're actually the one who sent me the link right after it aired. And you're like, this is exactly what I just talked about in my presentation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was a total synchronicity. The timing of your presentation and that episode coming out, that's an indicator to me that the collective is ready for this information. And another indicator is when I go onto Google, every article now is a hit piece on that episode, calling it my favorite, which we're naming this episode, a new age pseudoscience word salad. They said Joe Rogan Terrance Howard on Joe Rogan is a new age pseudoscience word salad. And when you type in Terrance Howard on Joe Rogan, it brings up pseudoscientific periodic table. And, you know, just because somebody says the periodic table is wrong on a podcast doesn't mean it's true, you know, all this stuff. So that tells me there's something to it. And we're going to get into that and so much more today. So welcome to the show, Mason.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was actually really cool. It was, you know, my presentation was Wednesday, and then 2 days later it dropped, and I was like, whoa, this is what I was talking about. He went way more in depth with like the shapes, the negative space between the flower of life and what he calls as a linchpin. And it's very fascinating. But just so if people didn't see the presentation, I talked a lot about a guy named Darius Dinshaw. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Nope. Green screen. Okay. But it's called Let There Be Light, and it's about tonations. It's about how the human body responds to specific tones of color. And then with the Terrance Howard stuff, well, we know that sound, if you multiply those wavelengths throughout, I don't know, a couple trillion times, you'll get a visual light. But in between those, we know that certain sounds, there's research that sound can break up like viruses and bacteria. Have you guys seen that? So you ping a very high frequency of light or sound that will destroy these microorganisms. And we know that, for example, like silver or gold will do the same thing. Well, what is that? That's a vibrational resonance. So the vibration of silver is antimicrobial. And so it has the ability to kind of purify the body and especially the water in the cell. That's why it's really good for water. But then we kind of get into some of his work, and he talks about the fact that everything is built off of hydrogen being like, I guess you could say, like one of the beginning parts of this periodic table. And then our standard periodic table has no relationship other than like atomic weight and like their little symbols. But in his example, if people haven't seen it, it really goes to show that I'm going to share my screen here real quick, that there is more of almost like a spiral, but it doesn't look like this. Think of it more as like a vortex like this and starting at the center. And it's almost more like a Fibonacci spiral where you have all these different elements. And then you'll have within these elements, hydrogen being a certain tone, a musical note. And then as you ascend, those tones actually turn into different variances of light. And one of the most important things of why this is so controversial is because this will show you how every single thing is connected to one another, but difference by degree. And that's Hermetic philosophy. That is, that's duality at its nature, So if you have hot and cold, well, the difference between the hot and cold is that variance in degree. And that basically what it's suggesting is hydrogen is no different than carbon, but by its tone of degree of separation. And that is completely revolutionary to science. And you got to remember that the people that created these periodic tables and, our theory of gravity and all like that, you've got Isaac Newton, which is a huge figure. He pretty much was the forefather of our mathematical institutions and stuff like that. He was an occultist. Now, that periodic table that you just saw was made by William
Walter
Atkinson.
Russell.
Walter Russell. Yeah. William Atkinson is a different philosopher, which is really good if people are interested. But so he was a mystic as well. So if Isaac Newton was a mystic and so was this other guy, who's to say who's right and who's wrong? It just depends on what kind of, I guess, agendas you want to look at. But the cool thing about the reason why Terrance Howard coming out so big, and they're personally attacking him from his past.
Yeah.
And I think a good judge of character is, yeah, you can have darkness in your past, but are you continuing down that route or are you trying to grow and evolve? And I think that's what the point of all this is. But everyone will sit there and be like, oh, he's, X, Y, and Z. He's not a good person. Well, no, he's gone through a lot in his life and he's discovered something that can fundamentally change the world around us, especially with just the understanding of the flower of life and those spaces in between. So whenever we do a meditation, we breathe in, that's an electric force. We breathe out, that's a magnetic force, but there's that 0 point, and that 0 point is the pause. So if we were to look at the flower of life as you breathe in, those spheres light up. And as you breathe out, that negative space, those little shapes that he created, is that exhaling. That's that magnetic force. But there's a pause. And the pause is the spaces that conjoin the two together. And there's meditational practices that you can do. I'm actually going to work on a visual representation of these spheres lighting up with certain tones and certain colors, and then exhaling through that magnetism. And you'd be surprised. The way that this color therapy works, or the way that meditation will work, is with your intention. So we all know that thoughts create things. In the Kabbalion, the first Hermetic law is that everything is mental. Everything comes to us through our awareness, through our thoughts, through our intentions. So if you're using these healing modalities with no awareness of where to place the light, where to place the energy, where to generate the tones in your body, it might not do anything because you need your conscious awareness to direct that energy into a certain place. So like this Dinshaw guy has this chart. It's a body chart. I have it on the presentation, which if people are interested, they could probably rewatch that on the Journey to Truth presentation video. But it shows different sections of the body and how they tonate, or they are accepted by specific colors of tones based on the chemical composition that Howard is sharing in this periodic table.
Right.
So that means that hydrogen, which bonds naturally to oxygen, it's through attraction. It's a normal attraction. But science and main science will have us believe that opposites attract. Now, if that's true and opposites attract, if I were to attract a woman that is my opposite, that might be a very evil person, because that would be an opposite, right? And that's what they kind of tell us, that opposite attract. And no, it's not. It's similar wavelengths are what attract. So every time you have an experience with a relationship, that person embodies a version of you that you are in resonance with,
Right.
no matter where you're at on that path. And that correlates directly with this periodic table.
Yeah.
Everything is connected.
Right. You attract what you put out. You're only attracting whatever frequency you're vibrating at in that moment. Because it's that wavelength. Like they're catching that airwave, and you guys are finding your way towards each other. But going back to the Terrance Howard thing and why they're demonizing him and stuff, and you nailed it as far as we need to be careful not to freeze people in time just because something that they did in the past, because we've all done stuff in the past that we aren't proud of and then we might regret, and we have to hold space for each other to heal and move forward, because that's really the only way we're going to pull ourselves out of this. If we freeze somebody in time and only view them as a negative person or as the enemy, then that's the only way they're going to show up in our reality. And we're not allowing space for that change to occur. So that's important. And another reason I think they're demonizing this periodic table is because it provides the antidote for all of our diseases. It literally, there's a as above, so below factor to it, and it mirrors the elements that it needs to cure. It shows you the cure, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And they don't like that. And he pointed that out. And if you just refer to that periodic table now, anytime something is going wrong within you, a disease, it doesn't matter what it is, it's a minor illness, you can find the element that you need, the substance that you need to cure it and reverse it. And they don't like that. And that's
you supplement it through sound.
Yeah.
There's a lady named Sherry Edwards. Let me see if I can pull this up. I'm just going to share her thing here. Where is this? Just real quick. So Sherry Edwards is a person that's created. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, so she's created something called bioacoustics, and bioacoustics is nothing new. But essentially what she does is she will record your voice, and through spectrum analysis will find the jagged edges or specific wavelengths that identify deficiencies within your mineral and electrical body. So that means your cells. So based off your voice, she can tell you, it says right here, the vocal print can identify toxins, pathogens, and nutritional supplements that are too low or too high. So with this new periodic table and how all of these elements are related, just as you said, basically, in a sense, if you have, say, some sort of mineral deficiency, you might not actually have to supplement, but you can actually listen to tones that will arrange these particles within your body to where they need to be. And that's kind of what this light therapy does. So you can use tones, sound, to emulate light on a lower spectrum and give yourself vitamins. But then here's the other kicker. How do they use that against us? You ever heard of acoustical engineering?
Right.
Music, the music industry, they can produce certain tones to generate certain emotions and get people stuck. Because the most powerful thing, and I think in our experience, is music. Music can make you emotional. If you watch a scary movie, you could take the sound off. The images aren't scary, but as soon as you add the sound, that's what it generates those emotions. So we know that sound or vibration.
Not just a scary movie, not to cut you up, but real quick, watch any movie or any show and take the sound out. It takes out so much of the emotion and the power of the scenes. The music adds like so much. And without that, it's just bland and doesn't have the same effect.
Or what's even creepier and is taking the laugh track out of a sitcom.
Yeah.
It's lame as fuck. I'm sorry.
Right. So again, sound, it's laughter, sound, it's generating.
Sound's the building block. They say in the Bible that God said, I created the earth. Now, So this is an interesting theory that came to me after we know that sound has so much importance. Sound creates light. In between the sound and light are all these various elements and isotopes and minerals. Who's to say that the language we speak, and I think we know, is manipulated, but what if there was a language that existed that used these pure tones that would allow beings to actually create as they speak? You know, we've got our words in our language, which are based off like Latin and Germanic roots. Well, it's mysticism tied with logic. So we're kind of like enslaved with our language. But if you listen to like different Chinese languages or different African languages, they use tones and intonation, which actually have a different emphasis of emotion. So then we can actually kind of think of sound as the foundation of our experience. Vibration will give you the different degrees in which these are separated. Sound is what organizes everything, and light is how you perceive it. So, in a sense, that's kind of what the secrets of Tesla was talking about. And if we know that sound, like you guys said, or like we all said earlier, generates emotion, what happens when we produce our own sounds through our voice? Well, you're doing the same thing, your vibration, your intention. How are you speaking those words? Is it powered by a good emotion or a negative emotion? You know, in arguments, it doesn't necessarily really matter how you say it. It's just the emotion behind what you say. Because you could say a really nice comment to someone, but if you have a shitty energy behind it, that's actually an insult.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right.
So it just opens up a whole new door. But the craziest thing is what he's talking about is if we're able to take hydrogen and change the vibration of that molecule to change a substance, well, that's what these extraterrestrial crafts are made of. They talk about alloys so pure that we can't recreate it because of our destructive chemical bonding. You know, we take these things, these two separate elements, and bind them together with a very harsh reaction. When these beings that create these perfect, like invisible aluminums are just changing one state to another to make a perfect harmonious union of that metal.
And you know what's super critical to bring up here is David Adair. I don't know if you're familiar with his testimony, but he talked about he's a brilliant mind, a genius actually, and he worked for the aerospace industry, but and all of his inventions basically got swept under the rug. But he was developing things like transparent aluminum and cures. He figured out a way to like accelerate healing and all this stuff, but he could only do it in the vacuum of space. Like on the space station, he realized that you can only create this perfect symmetry in these shapes, the natural, like the octagon with the honeycomb, whatever you call that pattern, that occurs perfectly in space every time. And he realized that they can literally grow craft. And this is something that within the aerospace industry, they've developed this decades ago. We have the ability to grow a craft, and he proved it. And not only grow it, but make it incredibly strong and transparent metals like aluminum. He was doing all this stuff, and if you watch his interviews, he said they would hire him basically to develop this stuff and invent it, and then they would take it from him, and it would never see the light of day again.
Yeah, it's a threat to the system because the system's not. Yeah, that's when he realized, like, oh, they're not trying to help humanity. They're trying to keep humanity enslaved and keep all the good stuff for themselves.
Yeah.
And then weaponize it against humanity many times, which is what's been going on for a long time.
But to my point is he wasn't able to create or do any of this stuff here because of what you just said, because of the chaotic frequencies and everything that we're just being bombarded with. And the music itself has been retuned to 440, which isn't in resonance with us.
Yeah.
But
same reason.
We're talking about sound, but we can't forget about the ELFs, the extremely low frequencies that we can't hear that are being used against us and emitted from our phones and cell phone towers and stuff. And not only what it's doing to our energy body, but to our blood. It's clotting our blood, and there's evidence of that. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But it makes sense. So Terrance always also talks about how pressure conditions create these planets. So if we think of the sun as, like, I guess you would say the birthing father of our solar system, well, it makes sense that the sun is attracted to Mercury because Mercury right now is mostly like a molten metal planet. So it's electrically connected to that planet. But he talks about a process in which the sun creates these planets. And as it drifts, because we know about the drift of the Earth, it's like 0.6 inches a year, which means it's moving away from the sun. That shows that possibly a long time ago, Mars was definitely in the place of Earth and there was life there. And that some of those beings live either inside the interior of Mars because the atmospheric conditions support life a little bit better, and that they may have come here because there is evidence of like pyramids on Mars and all this kind of stuff.
There's a giant face on Mars,
Yeah.
there's pyramids, there's glass dome destroyed,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of stuff.
And then you go a little bit farther past Mars and you see that asteroid belt. Well, that asteroid belt, if you reverse engineer its spin and combine all those pieces of matter together, that creates a planet. So what it shows is that the evolution of these spheres are different periods within our timeline. And then we go, whoa, astrology talks about this. You have influences of Saturn, you have influences of like Pluto, Mars, Venus. These are all characters within our string, like that resonance of those elements that are expressions throughout our collective consciousness. That's why it influences us subconsciously, because those are no longer necessarily in our timeline, but they still exist within our solar field. And then when it comes to like making those substances inside space, well, space has a different pressure condition. So if you were to try to do these element experiments on Earth, well, the pressure condition of Earth is completely different. But the way that these planets arrange, according to Terrance's model, is that they have specific wavelengths and angles. And these angles actually absorb all the solar radiation from not just our sun, but other suns. So we know that these suns create these coronal mass ejections. Well, what about Sirius B and Sirius A? Those particles will collide eventually, and enough mass and enough energy will create different solar systems. And we see that all around, and it's constant. Right. It's the only thing that's constant. If you have a graphic model with the current interpretation of gravity and you have the sun and earth, well, it works just fine. But you start adding other bodies in that model, then it all goes like kind of chaotic because gravity isn't stable. It's a theory. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's a theory. It's an unprovable theory. But magnetism and electric is not a theory. We know that if it's a scale, it's like a 180-degree scale, we know that in the center, it's not actually zero. It's equal. You have electric on one side and magnetic on the other side. And when they meet in the center, that is absolute equilibrium. It's not zero. So when a material is more electrically charged, that means it has a lower magnetic charge. But you just multiply those through that spectrum or through that scale, and you can find everything. The note C doubled is the same resonant frequency. But here's the crazy thing. That periodic table also shows the relationship of doubling a note, but a half note is in resonance with it as well. Because when you have a specific note, it creates a sine wave. If you have half a note, actually those sine waves, they have a peak that match, and that's what's resonance. So if you take 432 hertz and you divide that by 216 hertz will actually be at a half step resonance. So that creates harmony on more level than just doubling a note. You have half notes, you have quarter notes. That's how music works. That's how music, when you play a scale, they all work symmetrically. I had a video that showed that. So that means that not only is doubling a note have direct relationship, but half notes, quarter notes, and all that kind of stuff. That shows that there's even more connection to all these elements and all these things that create our existence. And it's wild.
Right. And well, that's what Terrance was talking about. Like the tone can be expressed as a color. It's the same wavelength, just twice as long. And which is how we get into color therapy. And actually, this allows us now to truly work with our chakra system and understand how we can work with each chakras based on tones and how it's affecting each one and what effect it's having. And this periodic table actually helps us understand that as well. So, I mean, there's just so many ways to look at this, and it just changes so many things if we're to accept this collectively, which is going to happen regardless of what Google's trying to do, you know?
Yeah, but we have to realize. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying the main, like Tyler was just telling me before the show, when you Google Terrance Howard, Joe Rogan, you get all these mainstream hit pieces. They're all like, oh, it's pseudoscience, word salad, BS, new age BS. And it's funny because in the episode, Terrence Howard is talking about how he contacted Neil deGrasse Tyson all excited because he's like, I found the whatever it was, what's it called? Grand Unified Theory or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like all excited because he's like in that first episode of Cosmos, he was talking about it and he's like, I found it. And he's trying to tell him, and he's like, he's marking off everything, saying wrong, 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 this is wrong. And he's like attacking it with vitriol and saying it's ridiculous and it's wrong and all this stuff because
sad.
He is completely programmed with the mainstream false models of everything, and he thinks that's, but it's funny because like they supposedly are trying to find that, and they're trying to, what is the definition of science? Well, it's trying to find the nature of reality and the truth, and but they're still in this box that they're limiting themselves while trying to expand out of the box. Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You just keep creating more false things to add on to the already false paradigms that you're holding on to.
Well, that's how you know.
And then you attack when you do find the truth. You're like, oh no, that's BS because it doesn't fit into this box and it's false. And it's like, no, I'm trying to show you how this is real and true.
That's how you know that there's agenda at play, because if new evidence is, exposed or trying to be looked at and they immediately deny it, that's not an expansive society. That's a society that's conditioned within a certain path that really has no interest in changing their ideas. And that's a society that will eventually collapse. If you're not able to accept new ideas and just go along with the regular ones, how will you ever plan on making any new inventions? And if you look at it, we always talk about, oh, there's always these things being created. No, there's not. There's just faster forms of the same technology for the last couple hundred years. Really hasn't changed at all.
It really hasn't. Right. And not progress. Right?
No, it's not. It's a stagnation. And what happens is we just rely on convenience versus we forget, why are we here? How can we better our lives, not distract us more? But going back to the chakras, it's so fascinating because the Easterns interpreted chakras as these colors. Well, medical science established the chakras with our hormonal signals. So they know that the heart produces a field, and in Eastern tradition, that field is green in our green heart chakra, but that green has a frequency, which has a musical note, which means you can actually change the way your hormonal structures are operating by tuning your body to these frequencies. And that opens up a whole new thing. And people know that. It's called sound bowl healing, but you have to have the right elements inside of your body in order to make those conditions or those pressures happen. Because sound is just pressure at a certain speed or rate, which is called Hertzian waves. So if I have a bunch of junk in my body and I'm trying to tonate my body with either music or color, well, it's not really going to work because those cells aren't actually able to transmit those frequencies between one another. There's no like electrical connections to them. That's why like minerals are so important. Copper is in every cell, silver, all that kind of stuff. So if you can cleanse the body, remineralize the body, and then do tonations, well, now you made a full connection within your body. And now you can kind of go through that octave or those scales and then really start to see some change. Like I've done sound bowl healing. And what's fascinating is that you can have a sound bowl and they'll play a tone. And it's a constant tone. And if it goes over a certain area, you can hear the pitch of that bowl change, which means that there's something in that field, because a pitch only change is if there's something dense that it's hitting against. And then after a while, you can actually break that up. And that's manipulating your magnetic field. Once you manipulate the magnetic field, that tells the body what to do internally. So all of this stuff is just opening brand new doors of like the theories of what these light beds or these healing chambers, all that stuff is possible. That's why they don't want this type of information coming out, because that opens the door of how to truly heal and what our actual experience in this reality is. That's why they're slandering him. Even if he could be wrong on certain aspects, which everyone's not 100%, but it's an idea that I think that opens a door for unlimited possibilities if what he says is true. And from my own research, doing spectrum analysis and tonation, and with Sherry Edwards' work, it's possible.
Yeah.
We know we can change structures in the body through sound. You can manipulate the way cells organize. You can manipulate viruses in the body with sound. You can kill bacteria with light. Like this is known. So now put
Yeah.
these together and see what we can do for humanity. But that doesn't make money.
Right.
Right.
Because you can get all the octave tones, scales, whether it's a bowl or a sound fork, and then get your own silver or whatever and heal your. You won't need the medical pharmaceutical at all. You still need like a doctor for like, you know, scrapes, burns, breaks, stuff like that. But I think that's what they're supposed to be for anyway. They're not supposed to be diagnosing a psychological condition and then making it up and saying, oh, let's just use this drug that was on a shelf
Right.
for this one. Like that's what they did with
which is poison because of how it's made, and and then you're just putting a band-aid on a symptom and you're not curing anything. And
then imagine this.
Them sick for life. And
imagine this. Imagine if you're able to use this same type of connections, how one atom is related to another through tonations. Now let's examine the relationship of these drugs. Are they harmonic? What spectrum are they actually producing? Then you actually might be able to know how it's manipulating the body at a deeper level, not just a chemical surface level, but a deeper level. What is the resonant frequency of this drug? What is the string of combinations of musical notes? And then you cross-reference that with a body or a specific hormone that they think it's going to affect, and probably watch it be completely chaotic. Well, and that's why we have all these side effects.
Yeah, and,
you know,
exactly.
It's interesting with our research on the voice of God technology. What comes up over and over is that the pharmaceuticals actually work in tandem with this direct energy weapon, and it could be all based on frequency. That's how the voice of God works. It's all based on specific frequencies, ELFs that bypass the conscious mind. They can actually, you know, penetrate your skull with these sounds. And what they realize is the pharmaceuticals keep the body vibrating at a lower rate that makes their technology more effective on you. So that's another reason for this. And another thing about the chakra system that I'm noticing is I'm seeing theories like people coming out like trying to debunk the chakra system and say that the chakras is a hoax and they were put in place by our creators so that they can weaponize each one against us, and all, like there's crazy theories out there, and there's people that offer sessions to actually like get rid of your chakra system and like all this crazy. I'm not lying. This is you can go research this, but I'm like, okay, so what's the end game here? What's the goal? Well, if they can manipulate you into believing that all this stuff is insignificant, and they can trick you into thinking, oh, I don't like my chakra system isn't real, then you're never going to understand how to heal. You're never going to you're never going to get there. And it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So then, okay, well, let's talk about the people that want to debunk chakras. Well, what is a chakra? Chakra was an older interpretation of a hormonal system. The root chakra, what does that symbolize? It symbolizes fear, instability, the flight or flight response. Well, what is that actually in the body? It's your adrenals. So anyone that says that a chakra is not real, I'm sorry, you're maybe interpreting it wrong, but these colors represent our hormonal glands in our body. You know, the sacral, the one that does expansion and feeling expression. Well, that's a prostate for a man, and that's a uterus and her fallopian tubes as a woman. That is how you experience life in a joyful way. And if you have a bad prostate, well, a lot of people that have these prostate conditions are kind of stunted with their growth or their expression of joy. Like they're kind of just stuck. And you can go through all these different hormones. So the fact that someone says, let's get rid of your chakras. Well, what if that's actually disconnecting your ability to manipulate your own hormones?
Right.
You ever thought of that? You can actually calm yourself down through intention and breathing, which is relaxing your adrenals, telling the adrenals to stop creating cortisol and calm yourself. So in a sense, you can take a mystical meditation on the color red, but then a logical understanding that that color red is associated with a gland in my body that I have dominion over. So if you're trying to get rid of your chakras, you're basically trying to run your operating system of your body with.
You're going to start shutting your body down.
Yeah, that's a silly idea.
Or they're trying to unify the chakras. This is another thing people are doing. They think that it keeps us separate and we're always at odds with each other. But I'm just sharing what I'm seeing.
No, I know that's the theory.
And they try to unify them. They think that you can like unify them all as one, and we're operating as one. And they sell it like that's the pseudoscience word salad, right? But that's how they're trying to sell it to people, and they can sell it. It sounds very.
It sounds really nice. Yeah. Oh,
I mean, you can make shit with some whipped cream sound nice.
Right.
Right.
But going back to what I brought up in my presentation from the Sands of Times books, when they were doing the early time travel experiments, when the person stepped into that field that they created that would actually allow you to traverse time and space as we know it, what they noticed is the person's aura became illuminated and then started expanding. And what they also noticed, which none of the scientists were expecting, was the chakra system started lighting up. And it was the first time that anyone had visibly seen a representation of the chakra system. And it made the scientists scratch their heads because they had, prior to that, they had thought it was the new age bullshit or woo-woo theories, right? But now they're forced, not the mainstream scientists maybe, but the people that were working on these projects were forced to recognize this and forced to understand, like, oh, there actually is something to this. And I would love to be able to have the public see that happen and occur in real time, because you can't argue that type of stuff.
First off, I love how all the most ancient wisdom and knowledge gets called new age bullshit. Like it's just hilarious to me.
1,000 years old, bro.
The exact inversion of the truth, right? It's like the most old ancient wisdom that got lost, and what's new, if anything's new age, it's what they're pushing. It's what the mainstream science and our modern, that BS is, you could call new age bullshit. But then they call the actual knowledge and wisdom that's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years new age bullshit.
Right.
It's like it's in the most ancient text. They all talk about this. It's in the most ancient tradition. They all talk about this.
What if they call it new age because that's what we're trying to make the new age of understanding?
Well, that's where the term actually came from. That's where the term new age came from, because people were talking about we're moving into the new age, the new age of Aquarius, the new age. And there was like even a magazine called New Age, and then that term new age just kind of like stuck. But then it got used, then it started getting used as a derogatory, like debunking term. Oh, that's new age. And it's like, it's actually really ancient knowledge and wisdom. Esoteric knowledge, you could call it esoteric, but it's true. It's ancient.
And then you scroll across a video that says, your chakra system is a psyop.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
But then there's a sensational theory.
One second, hold that thought. I really have to pee. I've been holding it this whole time.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Give me 1 second.
Nope, you can't pee. Sorry.
I'm gonna pause it. Now we're really like Joe Rogan. Take a sec. We gotta pee.
right. Nah, we gotta have the authentic Joe Rogan. Exactly. Yeah, but it's like they try to invert everything, right? So it's like everything that is the ancient wisdom and knowledge, they call it new age, as if it's this new like fad or something that is coming. It's like, no, this comes from like the ancient Vedic text and the ancient, like they go back to the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, and it actually goes back to Atlantis and Lemuria, way before that, and goes off planet, before that. So it's like it gets passed down, but then now we have this slave system that's trying to invert everything and convince us that, oh no, that's all BS. Don't look at any of that. Just stay in this box. And that's all you need to know.
Well, you also
don't look around for yourself. Just trust the experts.
Yeah.
Trust
you
the
also
authority.
have to think about it though. Like a lot of people that are super far scientific, they're not very religious, but those people that are in between that believe in the science, they also believe in a Jesus. And what was a Jesus?
Right.
He was studying these mystic philosophies from
Right.
different cultures. Because if
Right.
you look at all these different cultures and their belief systems, they'll have a different way of interpretation and then a different understanding mentally. And if you go around there and look at all these different languages and put all those pieces together, well, he obviously had a grander picture, a grander idea, and he was able to do the things he were. Well, even if people don't believe in Jesus, guess what? There's other ones there. There's Krishna, there's Buddha, you have, Yeshua for Jesus.
Yeah.
You have all these different beings that have done that. And how do they do that? They kept their minds open and they studied mysticism. I'm sorry,
Right.
that's what it is. It's mysticism. So if we understand that this new age is not actually as false as it was, because the idols that they have you worship, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is religion,
Yep.
obviously it worked, but we just no longer look at it. And that's why they don't want to usher in this new age. And so going back to that thought experiment, well, how do chakras actually work? When you have a woman has her menstrual cycle, what happens when she gets around other women? the cycle synchronizes with everybody. What is that?
Right.
That is in a magnetic signature. So there's going to be an alpha type of frequency, someone that is at the highest peak resonance, and all the women will actually sync to that woman's cycle. So that means that our fields, our morphogenic fields, actually can harmonize with one another through proximity. You don't even have to be in physical contact. Same with males. If there is an alpha in a room, this is how kind of like the military works. Sometimes they don't promote the alpha and it just kind of fucks up the crew, but you can get a group of men. There's going to be an alpha. There might be some competition, but crazy thing about that is that alpha will elevate everyone else's levels. You'll actually increase your own testosterone being by a person that's higher testosterone. So that shows that there is a field that interacts with all of us that allows us to become elevated based off of a person's signature. Another crazy thing, there's a therapy. I forget the name. We might have to find it post-edited. I have a chiropractor that has a friend in St. Louis, your area, that does healthy cell manipulation. And what she does is if a person has like a bad liver, she'll get a vial of a healthy liver and you hold it. And through resonance, you can actually tell your liver to sync up to that substance, that material. So that shows that you can transfer things. But we also know that because what happens when people that are sensitive touch objects that are haunted or that are imprinted with a certain emotion? There's a transfer of this magnetic and electric information, whether they want to believe it or not. It's 100% possible.
Right.
So the fact that you're going to say a chakra is not real, well, maybe your idea of a colorful wheel, but the fact that it's actually an electromagnetic emanation from an organ system that's secreted by information outwardly and internally, that's a little bit different conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
and by the way, you can see the chakras when you're in a certain state of consciousness.
Yeah. And electrocephalograms can actually measure your magnetic field.
Yeah.
Well,
You have 7 electromagnetic fields within the body that when they are activated, meaning you have conscious control of your hormonal systems, that's when you have an open third eye. People are like, oh, let's meditate. That's fine. No, focus on the actual internal organ that is creating that magnetic wave. And you're actually, when you're opening and closing your chakras, you're manipulating the release of those hormones and the extraction of those hormones. And people don't really realize that's the connection, body, mind, and soul. You need all 3. So you need to have the conceptual idea of what it is, the physical manipulation of the gland, and the secretion of these sacred oils is what they're called.
right.
And that's the key to longevity.
You know, this reminds me of the Thea Uba Prophecy, a book we refer to a lot. But in that book, they talk about, for one, sound a lot and how actually sound pollution is far worse than the air pollution.
Yeah.
And like the exhaust pipes from a motorcycle is more detrimental to your body than the actual exhaust itself. But that's something that's in
the sound you mean from the motorcycle.
The sound from the exhaust pipes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But to go into color, what they also talk about is the aura being, you know, all the ancient paintings that we see that depict like this round, like halo looking thing around the head. Well, according to this book, so these beings were actually vibrating and resonating in such a high frequency that their aura was actually visible. And people were seeing this aura, mistaking it for like a halo, or maybe it did look like a halo, but they were painting the aura, essentially. When they were depicting these figures, they were actually depicting the aura. And I think that's something that, you know, we don't actually quite understand, or maybe the modern, the people who are trying to decipher this paint. Well, hang on, let me finish.
That's where the halo came from as well. To say it doesn't just come out of nowhere. That's where it came from.
Right. It came from that. So then also going back to color, they talk about how wearing even the right color clothing can heal your body, and painting your room the right color can heal your body. And what they would do is, on this other planet they talk about in this book, so everybody has their own like color of their aura, right? Well, whenever you're able to see that color, then you can work with that color. And what they would do is wear certain colors that match that, and that's how they stayed in balance and in harmony. And their homes would be painted that same color, not painted, but their homes would be that color as well. And it was unique, specific to the individual, and that's how they were able to stay in such harmony. And that's something that I think we should really start integrating, and we could integrate here.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned in my presentation that color room therapy is a thing that existed, that the Egyptians created. So if you think about like, yeah, we have that. What I think that the halo was like I told you before, it's the conscious control of your hormonal centers that takes that 7 vibrational spectrum, and at the top it emanates that white. So we know that color from the sun is white light, but then it comes through our prismatic lens of this atmosphere and it turns into all the different fractals. Well, if you can take all 7, open up those pathways, those hormones, and unify those by bridging one to the next, I think that's what that white is. That's someone that has personal mastery of the human body, not the human experience, the human body. But then going back to the sound thing that you're talking about with the exhaust pipes, this is what's crazy. So you have waves that are passing through all over the place, and they collide. These are things that actually collide. So if you have a loud motorcycle or a loud exhaust, you're affecting the wavelength of, say, oxygen, because the waves that are entangling will change the expression or change the note. So if you have, say, an exhaust passing by you, well, the sound waves are actually going to penetrate your body and arrange your own tones and make it so it's say, for example, like oxygen is the note of A. Well, maybe it hits it just a little bit, makes an A flat. So now you change the chemical structure of mass or an atom, and it's 100% possible.
Right.
With this new periodic table, we know that everything has a tone. So if there's a competing or louder tone colliding with these things, that causes interference. That's what cell phone towers are. That's why when you have a cell phone tower and it's raining, the water absorbs that frequency because it's colliding, and that collision creates a different thing. Same thing with the body. When these wavelengths penetrate our body, our body is a symphony of notes and colors that when it penetrates the body, it actually moves particles and causes heating, which is damage. Now, it's not causing ionized radiation, but radiation nonetheless, where you're actually agitating the cells because of the movement through the sound.
Right.
And all these devices, Wi-Fi, X-ray, microwave, all of those are actually visible light. Well, not visible, some are invisible, but they're light spectrums that can be deduced and brought down into an audible level of interpretation. So it's just, the science is there. They just want it compartmentalized so you don't see the relationship between all these things.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Exactly.
the Thea Uber prophecy, they described it. They said that if you were able to see the effects that the sound was having on your astral body, you would run from that sound like you're running from a burning building.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you would understand how damaging it actually is to your energetic field. And that's something that it never really quite occurs to us. I mean, certain people, we feel it. We're like, oh, I can't stand that sound. I can't, that song, I just bothers me, but we don't really understand why. But I think on a subconscious level, we know something's off with it.
Well, I think sound manipulates, like we were saying, the auric field. So that would manipulate your hormone centers. And I think light manipulates living tissue. So I think the higher up on the spectrum, the more physical changes is allowed. That's why there's a book. It's an esoteric book. It's by C.Z. Zane. It's an incredible book, but he talks about that everything that happens in your life, whether it's an illness, a thought, it exists within the field first. So we know that sound can actually arrange particles, but mainly those hormonal centers. So if you're influencing the hormonal centers with sound, light is going to influence the tissues. That's how we know that sound can open doorways, and then light can penetrate or heat objects. So if you take like a dubstep concert, for example, and you take all those various different frequencies, which are all inharmonious and artificial, and you're in there, the reason why you feel so razzled or maybe adrenalized is because those frequencies are hitting at you so hard, manipulating your entire field. And by the time you're done, you don't even have to drink, but you felt like you're hungover just from sound.
Right.
And they know that. Then they add the lights, and that's why it's a psychedelic experience. And that's why psychedelics follow these type of things, because you're already creating micro traumas in your body through the music. You're dissociating, and then you're taking drugs to further dissociate. And it's done like that on purpose. If you look at the evolution of music, you had harmonious music that was healing, that could bring people to tears just through music. And then now you have just this crazy destructive form of entertainment
Right.
that God knows what it's doing to you.
And all the MK Ultra mind control that's like within that, and the satanic stuff that's within that, even the lyrics and everything. Right. It's like, and then look at the music videos and look at the award show ceremonies and all that. Like,
oh yeah,
it's even beyond just the sound. Like, they're doing the visuals and the words and everything now. It's like they're not even trying to be subtle.
And they
so
know, and they know us better than we know ourselves because they're occultists, right? They come from these secret societies. They understand how the psychology of color, and they know how to use that color. And it's a strategy, it's a marketing strategy, right? And they know what colors are doing what to us and how to make us crave something or whatever the case may be. They understand that, and they use that all the time against us. And they don't teach us that in school intentionally, so we don't understand it. So we're just completely oblivious to the fact that we are literally being mind controlled. Not just mind controlled, our entire body is actually being controlled in some cases. And we can take this conversation wherever we want, but
yeah,
I mean, it's happening. It's happening. It's completely obvious. And I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the microwave radiation, right? I just made a post. This is something I came across years ago, but how, in like the 70s, the microwaves were banned in Russia and now they're legal again. But the reason is because that microwave radiation was literally depleting your food of nutrients and radiating the food and making it cancerous. And I don't think that's stopped. And I think that still occurs. And I haven't used a microwave in years, but it's another form of sound and light, affecting organic tissue.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing about microwaves, and no one really pays attention to it. How does it actually heat? Well, it's sending electric energy to the water molecules and agitating them. And that agitation creates heat. And that heat actually causes electron fall off. So you're charging that water. And that's why when you heat up food, the plate is hotter than the actual food, because in ceramics, there's actually trapped water. I don't know if a lot of people know that. That's why it gets so hot. But then when you pull that food out, not only is it depleted of its water, the particles of the water are charged, but there's actual residual radiation. If you take it out of the microwave and put an EMF sensor on there, there's a high amount of radiation active within that food because those particles are so agitated. That's what creates friction. That friction creates the heat, but that heat has a residual charge on it. So you're eating a highly ionized food item for convenience, and it's not good for you at all.
Right. Yeah. Right. And there's a restaurant by my house that doesn't use microwaves because they're aware of this. But most restaurants use microwaves. A lot of them do.
A lot of them do.
And especially fast food joints. So it's not only, you might think you're ordering something healthy off the menu, but how is it prepared? And then you can also bring the person in, the individual who's preparing the food. What mood were they in? What kind of energy signature are they carrying? Right. And their own frequency can affect the meal, the food that you're being served. I mean, there's so many factors to consider.
On top of the GMO ingredients in the first place and the pesticides and the go down the list,
That's why I don't know if a lot of people know, but they always say like, oh, home cooked meals are the best. It's because the conditions in which they're made. You can have two sandwiches, one microwave and one not, and it will taste different. Right. And even though it's the same exact sandwich, it's just the way that it was constructed. You could have a steak cooked at a restaurant. It could be a delicious steak. Well, let me cook you a steak. I love cooking. So that way I'm actually imprinting the water within that steak with my own energy. And then you eat that, you're like, oh, it's delicious. Like, yeah.
It's made with love.
I have that emotion towards it. When you go to a restaurant, you have no idea if that guy just got off like a Coke bender or he's going through a divorce. Like, you have no idea what energy is going into your food.
Or at the very least, he's just trying to get through the day, and he doesn't give a shit. He's just okay. It's gonna make this.
Well, that's why food cooked by your grandma always tastes the best. Literally, she's making it with love. She wants to see her grandchildren happy, and we don't know why, but grandma's meatloaf is the best, or whatever.
Grandma's cookies.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And there's really something to that. And there's a whole energetic component that we're just not considering. It's not the ingredients. It's not the recipe. I mean, it might have something to do with it, but it's
that
energy.
too. Yeah. But
it's the energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, I'll eat food that is, I'm like, man, why do these strawberries taste so much better than most, or why do these
and they're like tiny
tomatoes taste so much? Yeah. And I'm like, it's all of those things. It's the way it's grown. It's not GMO. It's not just being organic, because and even a lot of stuff that gets labeled organic these days is not
Still
good.
grown in a field with
Or it's not
pesticides.
actually right. It's not actually organic, but it's like
Right.
it's how it was grown, and it's the energy going into it. Like you guys said, it's a lot of these factors that our mainstream society doesn't even consider at all.
Right.
It's not even like taught to us, like you said.
So, Mason, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I know we've had you on the show a few times. Years ago, you told your story for the first time, but maybe for the audience who doesn't know, how did you get into all this? What even inspired you to start researching this stuff? And I know you were, you were an, I always forget what the hell the title it was. What were you, an analyst?
Yeah, I was a geospatial analyst.
That's
so
what it was. Yeah.
Geo mean earth, spatial mean measurement. And essentially what we did is we manipulated various different bands of light to get different results in the form of imagery. So you have something like panchromatic, which is black and white. That's really good for measurement. It's really good for identifying things. You have multispectral, hyperspectral. Those are just turning off various different bands of light. So you have like 1 through 7. Some sensors have different half-step tones, just like that music. So they can have more than 7 bands. And you could turn those on and off, and you can actually see specific, I will say, residues or exhausts or fumes with these various combinations turning on and off, which opens up again this topic of resonance and light turning off. If you turn off, like say, the red frequency and the yellow, well, now you can identify things chemically that are following that pattern. And I don't think I'll go any further than that because I just got a hit in my head. So, but so I studied this stuff, and a lot of period of my life, I went through a lot of struggles in my younger years. I went through a lot of trauma, whether it's self-induced by other people or just life in general. And it came to a point when all this chaos really started when I went to DC, and I was doing really well. I was 25 years old. I was an instructor for an intelligence agency, not teaching like a huge class, but it was a class nonetheless. I'm the youngest instructor, I think, at that time. And my life kind of was going sideways. It wasn't my full true potential, I don't think. And I was getting ready to turn 28. And for those people that are into astrology, that is Saturn's return. And Saturn's return is the one that's going to show you disappointments and restrictions. And if you're on your wrong path, it will definitely show you. And I had a near-death experience. And various other things that kind of led up to those moments. I got approached by some secret society members. I had a different interpretation of them then. I didn't really know anything about them, but I knew something was off because they've kind of followed me in my career and trying to invite me into these things. I didn't really have any interest. I love the material that they talk about, but I don't like the idea of joining a secret organization and have someone kind of confine me or mold me in the way they want me to interpret this information. I'd rather discover it myself. So long story short, I got approached by these people in the intelligence agencies, and that abruptly caused a very disruptive moment in my life. Like I said, I had a near-death experience, and it took me that was in 2017. Took me about 2 years to kind of recalibrate because I kept doing the same type of things. I was into the same, hobbies like drinking and partying. But then eventually everything that I had worked for started getting pulled from me. And it almost felt like the universe was against me in a way. And the one thing I have, thankfully, I joined the Army, is they always told you to never give up. And I'll tell you what, there were so many times I wanted to give up. There's so many times I was so tired, I was so upset, I was so alone that I thought I couldn't do it. And there's a couple of times that I tried to end my life, even after my near-death experience. It was just so difficult, losing everything, losing your credentials, having no family or friends able to help you. And I eventually, my mom was into Reiki. I never believed in any of that kind of stuff. In fact, I was atheist, which most people in these industries are. But I did believe in the stars, and I would talk to the stars. I'd like yell at them. I'd be so angry. And then I buckled down, and I went was on a walk, homeless at this time for about, I think, 8 months. And I stumbled into a crystal store and I met this woman and she goes, "Oh my gosh, come here." And I was like, "What?" Like, I didn't look like I'm homeless. Like, I still dress nice. I had a gym membership, so I take a shower and I live down in my car, but I'm homeless. And she started saying, like, "You have a lot of darkness in you. Let me help you." And so she did a sound bowl clearing and then she gave me a crystal. And she says, anything that's affecting your mind, it was a labradorite crystal at the time. She's like, anything that's affecting your mind, put it into this crystal and try to see it a different way. And so I did that. And I kind of realized that you can manipulate your own thoughts if you don't identify with the images. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but long story short, I eventually got out of DC, which saved my life. Because if I were to stay there any longer, I probably wouldn't have made it. But I spent a lot of my time unpacking what I had learned, what I had experienced. And I spent a lot of time in nature, and nature actually reharmonized my body. I had been using substances that made me big because I was a bodybuilder. And nature, just being alone in nature every single day, I shit you not, actually recalibrated my hormones and made it as if I was back to when I had never started those things before. And it helped me relax my mind, and it helped me gain a deeper understanding of what everything is connected. You know, you sit there and walk on the trail and you see these colonies of these ants, or you see these two ducks, and you see the relationship, how they have with nature and how opposite we are. And I started reading a book called A Celestine Prophecy and started unlocking energy dynamics. And I was like, oh my gosh, these chakras are colors. Heard of chakras before, never believed them. But I realized that these are all colors, and that the way that everything in nature kind of navigates and move and how everything's created is a harmony. It's a symphony. It's all these different pieces that collectively create our experience. It's all through pattern recognition. And then I started discovering synchronicities and the connection between my thoughts that create events to say, hey, over here, focus on this. And that this over there was a book that leaded down more information that unlocked different possibilities in my mind that actually started allowing me to heal my past. And not just my past, I realized that it's genetic trauma. It's trauma from my ancestry. And when I started really going through those, that unlocked even more things. And what is that? That's harmonizing the ancient memories in your genetics. It's rewriting those tones to make it a musical masterpiece once more. And then I started just kind of, observing what's going on in the world and how everything's kind of just freaking crazy. The QAnon stuff happened, the COVID happened. And then I realized, like, oh my God, everything revolves around light, everything revolves around sound, everything revolves around vibration, just like Tesla said. And then now all this stuff is coming to a forefront. Like, I have a chart here. You won't be able to see it because my green screen, that tells you if you're deficient within certain things in your body, emotionally and mentally, what color and what tone to use. And it makes sense to me because when I was in nature, I'd have a specific emotion that I'd focus on. I would go on the walk and be like, okay, I'm going to focus on my adrenals. And the way I connected these was because of my scientific background. Like, okay, there's a chakra, it's red. What is it doing? Oh, it's anger, it's fear. What is that? Oh my gosh, that's adrenals. That's adrenaline. So then I connected the color to a function within my body. And then if you look at that, all creatures actually have this. Animals have this. Plants don't, but plants have the higher chakras, which are the heart, the thalamus, and then the mind. They have a neural network underneath the ground. They're just more integrated, and we're more separate. That's why we have the 7 bands versus how some people say they want to connect it into one. It's not how our body works. It will when you leave this vessel, but that's not how it works here. And then I just kind of kept going on my journey, following those synchronicities, meeting people like you at ESETI. You guys were awesome. And I was just like, wow, talking to you guys, finding my tribe, finding people with similar ideas. And then I finally said to myself, I'm not crazy. I'm not hurt. I'm not abandoned. I was just on the wrong path. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful.
Beautiful. And
amazing.
And it was amazing meeting you. What was that, 2019 or 2020?
2020.
2020, we met you. And I remember noticing something right off the bat about you. We had a one conversation one night, but I knew right off the bat you were very intelligent, and and I don't even remember exactly the conversation anymore. But I remember like just noticing something was different about this guy. And look, here we are.
Yeah.
4 years later. And, you just spoke at our conference and we've had you on the show 3 times now. And like, wow, from the first time to now, like just watching you really step into your power and just like bring this next level information and make it understandable and digestible for people. You're doing something right. And congratulations. And, for pulling yourself out and being the example that people need to see, because that story, I guarantee people are going to listen to that and it's going to move them and make them realize, oh, it's not over for me. Like there is hope. There is a way out of this. So thank you for all that. And
No, you're so very
congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could probably end it on that note.
Yeah, we
could.
are, and I'm going to give you a chance really quick to explain Merlin's Lab behind you, because one of the things I didn't mention is Mason is also one of our affiliates. He was a vendor at the conference. He makes these amazing orgone pyramids
Amazing stuff.
and
Yeah.
colloidal silver, which is extremely crucial for healing in a number of ways. I think it can even be used as a natural antibiotic too, which a lot of people don't understand. They think they have to go to the doctor to go get an antibiotic. No, you can just start taking colloidal silver. And I'll let you explain your products and where people can find them and how they can save 10% with our promo code.
Yeah, absolutely. So merlins-lab.com. That's my website for my orgone or my silver. I am going to be coming out with a colloidal copper lotion. And the reason why it's a lotion, not internal, is because your cells already have a lot of copper. But copper on topically can help with sunburns, help with scars, help with all sorts of stuff. And then if the market ever gets better, colloidal gold. So the cool thing about those three metals is gold helps neurons in the brain, silver helps detoxify and rebuild your nervous system, and then copper is the cellular level. So these three prime metals that we use as currency are very, very healthy inside the body. But then I also have my pyramids, and I'll have to post a video on YouTube about my journey of my pyramids. I don't know if I showed you guys at the conference because you guys were busy, but my first pyramid, underneath the light, there is no visible light on the bottom of it. The second one I built, those are the new ones. The second one I built, you actually started seeing a visible light spectrum, the full light spectrum. And the newest one I have, let me turn off my my background here so I could show people, because this is actually incredible. People ask me, how did you do it? And I said, I don't know. I just keep doing what I'm doing. Background filters. All right. So let's do none. Okay. So let me find this video. But anyway, so orgone pyramids, they don't do exactly what the Omnia patch does. What it does is it acts as a barrier. So these wireless frequencies are kind of all around us. And the reason why it attaches to us and they're positive is because naturally our body wants to be a negative ionized being. That's why we go ground and we exchange our positive to the Earth's negative, and it's a relationship. We actually heal the Earth as the Earth heals us. It's beautiful. Same thing with our oxygen. You breathe in electric, you breathe out radiance, and the plants breathe in radiance and they breathe out electric. So it's just a beautiful symphony of how all these things kind of come together. But let me show you this, because I was just looking at it one day and I was like, this is mind blowing. So as you can see, let me see my finger here. See the light coming through?
Oh yeah.
Right.
And now it's a full spectrum cross of visible light that's going through there.
Nice.
You see it's like almost evenly distributed, and it's a full cross. It's quite incredible. And it just shows you, like, if you sit underneath there, we all know that a triangle kind of separates the light band. So it's taking light again and separating it, and you could just stand underneath there and get it. But those are kind of what my pyramids look like the one you saw there. And then I make little ones and larger ones, and those big ones are probably my favorite because they have the most metal, and they're quite heavy. But merlins-lab.com, and then on Instagram, I think I'm Merlins Lab too. I just changed that handle. I'm not really on social media. I'm very, very busy. Yeah, Merlins_lab11 is what my Instagram is. So that's that.
And you can save 10% off all those products with promo code Journey to Truth.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's the promo code anyway. It'll be in the description below.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so just for the people that aren't quite understanding, you're saying, you can get underneath of one of these. Well, somebody's going to be like, oh, how can I get underneath of these? Well, Mason makes these pyramids where these copper legs extend. It's a couple, 4 or 5 feet tall, and you could actually sit underneath of it and experience the effects of the light that's being fractalized and coming through. So that's what he's talking about. And I think my dad's actually having a custom one made from you right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's gonna get one of those. Yeah, so the idea behind this is I didn't want to add any frequencies to it. I didn't want to add anything artificial to it. I have a feeling that people that use these type of devices with artificial magnetic fields, I have a feeling that's not good for you. I'm just gonna say that. But yeah, natural and non-moving parts. That's kind of right. How I do.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. One of my favorites in a while. I mean, it's next level stuff. And thank you so much.
Yes.
You're doing some incredible work, and we really appreciate you being here. Everyone, go check out his website. Go check out his Instagram page. Check out the products. Get some of the colloidal silver. I'm telling you, it works. We're moving into a new age, and this is how we do it. So we can't thank you enough for joining us. And until next time, well, first of all, if anybody wants to catch your presentation, the conference replay is still available. That link is below. The replay is $88, and it's the entire conference. So you can catch that for a couple months while it's still available. And I highly recommend it. Mason's talk was awesome, as I'm sure you've gathered by listening to this. And Aaron, did you want to add anything before we wrap this up?
I just want to add, so I know your colloidal silver is a threat to the system, because remember that first the conference last year when you gave us a free bottle of it, I had it in my checked bag, and when I got home, 95% of the bottle was empty. They had dumped out almost all of it.
Wow.
And it's a tiny bottle, so it's not.
Yeah, it should be.
There's no reason for them to do that. Right.
It's weird.
They literally dumped out all but like a teeny tiny little bit that was at the bottom. Well,
what happens is when they X-ray it, they're going to show that it's radioactive. So they want to know what it is. Not radioactive, but it reflects light because it's silver ion particles.
That's probably why. And they're like, what?
So they're probably like, well, what the?
Is this a bomb? Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Just dump it out.
I remember being pissed about that. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you got another one this year, right?
Yeah.
Did I give you one this year?
No, but
no, you didn't. You didn't. You failed. No, no, we'll order some from you. Yeah, I know you're busy.
But I want to support you.
But yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And guys, if you want to check out our brand new website, journeytotruth.online, and sign up for our new monthly email newsletter, you can do that. And everything that we offer can be found under that website. So we appreciate all the support. We love you. We can't do this without you. And until next time, have a great evening. Good night.
What happens when water is exposed to EMF, or wireless radiation? Here's something you may not know. Water is conscious, and it responds vibrationally to whatever it is exposed to. At Omnia, we've done an experiment where we froze and photographed 3 samples of water. Water which was not exposed to EMF radiation, the baseline, looked like this. Water which was exposed to an EMF field, a 5G radiation field in fact, looked like this. And water which was exposed to EMF that is balanced by the Omnia radiation balancer looked like this. See the difference? Remember, your body is 70% water. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount.